All right, today we are cracking the code on dirty money. We're going to dive deep into the global rulebook that authorities use to hunt down illegal cash, and we'll explore the strategies that are powering this massive, worldwide financial fight.
I mean, that's really the core question, isn't it? This isn't some Hollywood movie with car chases. It's a high-stakes war fought with data, with regulations, and with a global playbook that's designed to follow the money no matter how cleverly someone tries to hide it.
So here's our game plan for this journey. First, we'll get a lay of the land, the global battlefield. Then, we're going to open up the investigator's toolkit to see what powers they have. After that, we'll look at how criminals try to get around the system with untraceable cash, how the good guys keep score and adopt their strategy, and finally, what happens when the hammer drops on people who break the rules.
Okay, let's start by just wrapping our heads around the sheer scale of this fight. This isn't just one country fighting its own criminals. We're talking about a coordinated global effort. And the bedrock of this whole thing is a set of rules from the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF. Think of them as the world's financial watchdog. Now, these aren't just polite suggestions. They are the core strategy, the international playbook that pretty much every country agrees to follow to shut down money laundering and the financing of terrorism. So, how does an investigation even get started? Well, it all begins with having the right tools for the job. Let's look at the first and most fundamental one, the legal powers that authorities absolutely need to go after financial criminals. The key phrase here, the one that makes everything else possible, is sufficient legal power. Without it, investigators are just stuck. They can't get off the starting line. This recommendation is all about making sure they have the legal muscle to get the evidence they need to actually build a case. And these powers get really specific. We're talking about the ability to walk into a bank and demand transaction records, the power to issue legal orders that force a company to hand over documents, the authority to search a property and seize evidence, and of course, the right to use all the latest forensic tools. I mean, without these, criminals would basically be untouchable. And here's a look at how it works in practice. It all starts with a suspicion. Maybe some odd transactions get flagged. Then comes the critical step, the court order. Investigators have to get legal approval to dig deeper. And once they have that, that's when you get the reveal. They can finally dive into the transaction data, peel back all the layers of secrecy, and find the beneficial owners. That's the key term for the real people who are actually controlling and profiting from the money, often hidden behind webs of anonymous shell companies. But, criminals adapt. So what happens when they just try to bypass the banking system altogether? Well, that brings us to the next stage of this cat-and-mouse game, the world of old-fashioned, untraceable cash. This quote from the FATF really just nails the problem perfectly. When criminals physically move huge amounts of cash across borders, they're stepping completely outside that digital world of monitoring and bank records. They effectively go dark. And you can see the difference right here. It is just night and day. On one side, you have the regulated system, which always leaves a digital trail. It's monitored, it's traceable. On the other side, you have bulk cash. It's physical, it's anonymous, and its whole purpose is to remain undetected. That's what makes it so dangerous. So how do you stop a ghost? Well, you have to set up tripwires. Authorities make people declare large amounts of cash when they cross a border. They use intelligence to conduct targeted, non-random inspections. They have clear legal rules that let them seize any money that isn't declared. And, this is so important, they cooperate and share information across borders, trying to connect the dots on a global scale. Okay, let's zoom out from the individual chase for a second and look at the high-level strategy. How do authorities even know if what they're doing is working? And how do they adapt when criminals, inevitably, come up with new schemes? It sounds simple, right? But it's an absolutely critical part of an effective strategy. And that's where another key FATF recommendation comes in. Countries are required to keep detailed statistics on their efforts. After all, you can't possibly fix what you don't measure. And this chart is a perfect example of why that data is so powerful. So let's say banks are filing a ton of suspicious activity reports, or SARs. A SARS is basically a heads up a bank sends to the authorities saying, hey, this transaction looks fishy. So the first bar, the number of reports, is super high. But then you look at the second bar, the number of actual money laundering prosecutions, and it's way down here. That's what you call an enforcement gap. It's a massive, blinking red light in the data that tells the authorities, hey, something in our system is broken and you need to fix it now. But just spotting a problem in the data is only the first step. You also have to give the people on the front lines the tools to actually fix it. And that brings us to another recommendation, which is all about providing clear guidance and feedback to the banks and other institutions that are seeing this stuff every day.
So this is the proactive part of the fight. Authorities will publish reports on new criminal tactics, how they're using luxury real estate or the art market these days. They share updated lists of red flags that banks should be watching for. And they create a constant feedback loop. It's all about trying to keep the good guys one step ahead of the criminals.
So, what happens when a bank or some other firm just doesn't follow the rules? Well, that brings us to our final section, the consequences. This is where the regulators drop the hammer.
The three key words here are effective, proportionate, and dissuasive. Let's break that down. It means the penalties have to actually be painful. They have to match how bad the failure was, and maybe most importantly, they have to be scary enough to make everyone else in the industry think twice about cutting corners.
And we're not just talking about some tiny slap on the wrist. The enforcement toolkit is deep. Regulators can hit companies with crippling business restrictions, or even threaten to pull their license to operate entirely. They can hold individual managers personally accountable, and they can force a company to spend a fortune on programs to fix their broken systems.
And the financial penalties, they can be absolutely staggering. A number like this, $250 million, that's not just the cost of doing business. That's a headline-grabbing, board-shaking penalty. Fines this big have literally forced some of the world's biggest banks to completely rebuild their compliance systems from the ground up. It shows that not following the rules can have game-changing consequences. So why does all this matter? Because when you put it all together, these recommendations create a global defense system. They protect the integrity of the financial networks we all rely on. And to put it simply, they make it a whole lot harder for criminals and terrorists to profit from the harm they cause. And that kind of leaves us with one final big question. The rulebook is written, the tools are there, but in a world of crypto, fintech, and instant global payments, the game is changing faster than ever. So the real question is, can the rulemakers ever truly keep up?
Thank you for watching this lesson. If you found it helpful, please like the video and subscribe for more AML and compliance training. If you would like to earn an anti-money laundering certificate, please visit www.nasiacademy.ca. The first course is free and eligible for certification. I'll see you in the next lesson.